God bless Nicole Pross. The non-existent brain image being circulated by anti-pornography activist. The public is enamored with images of brains, as neuroscientists should not be. As a neuroscientist, they should not be. By the end of this article, you should be able to describe why this image may be evidence against the existence of pornography addiction. This shows images that appear to be from a single photon emission compared to tomography SPECT. SPECT images are often generated by injecting a patient with a biological tag used to highlight a particular molecule of interest, but SPECT images can also be created without tracers. Online, we often see this image used by anti-pornography extremists as to if their claim that science supports their claims. For example, today, December 15th, 2001, this image was used. Porn is not a true addiction, and then they say, here's your brand on porn, here's your brand on heroin, here's your brand on porn. Posted by Clyde Circus on Twitter on December 15th, 2020. Let's get a better look at their evidence. This is the image from their tweet. There are many methods to image the brain. SPECT is a bit less common. Psychological studies than fMRI or EEG, but SPECT is a well-known tool. Why isn't this an fMRI study is one question to ask, in particular. Why can't they get fMRI scans of people's brains on this stuff? The image appears to show that the brains of the three different people. One claims to be your brain, which is assumably means healthy brain. The other is a brain on heroin. The direct administration of drugs in laboratory in humans is exceedingly rare, although it can be done. Presumably the label is actually intended to imply the brain of a person who has used heroin for some period in the past. The last brain is labeled on porn. We show pornography to test subjects all the time in the laboratory, so that is more likely. However, SPECT does not capture the time series well. It's more of a snapshot of imaging techniques. So once again, I'm assuming that they meant that this person consumed pornography in the past. Interestingly, they're not labeled a pornography addict or similar, suggesting that merely viewing pornography will cause greater loss of brain matter than some amount of heroin use. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Here's your brain. So there are no published studies of SPECT for pornography or pornography addiction. This created a real puzzle. Initially, I assumed these images were pulled from an old case series of SPECT images claiming to be of sex addicts. Here's a sample from the SPECT study by Daniel Ammon. So here we go. These were not in color, so I thought perhaps someone got creative with MS Paint. Or on further inspection, however, from the SPECT image of the purported, quote, pornography it did not actually exist anywhere in the paper. Also, this case series also has been widely criticized as the all claimed, quote, behavioral, unquote, addicts that also reported substance abuse addiction. So where did the image come from? I found the original image blog where I believe it first appeared, which has an accompanying YouTube video with Dr. Lawrence Tucker. I was able to verify that Dr. Tucker is a licensed physician in California. The PLC, Professional Limited Liability Corporation, refers to its business structure, is not a medical boarding or qualification. However, I was a little perplexed. This is Dr. Tucker pointing at a brain while describing the parietal lobe. The parietal lobe is nowhere near where he's pointing. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they asked him to point over and over and he was getting tired of it. It's very likely that Dr. Tucker knows where the parietal lobe is. The Conquer series appears to be selling a quote quit porn unquote intervention. Describes itself as the Conquer series as a powerful clinical study in transforming the lives of men around this world. Now in 2 action-packed volumes, each containing biblical teaching and proven principles to help men conquer porn. I'm an atheist. I don't believe in any of this shit, So why would I want Bible-based teachings as a therapy? It's a waste of money. As I was reading about my company, their helpful chat popped up offering to answer my question. Unfortunately, the live person on the chat was not aware of the provenance of the image. Luckily, Dr. Tucker appears to offer an email address on this website. I have requested the source and will update the article if I receive a response. Also, I've never seen a published SPECT image colored like that. Here, seemingly reflecting an activity, what do SPECT images normally look like? Here's a sample of a SPECT with a tracer in a 2021 publication. There you go. That's what it normally looks like. Here's a SPECT image without a tracer that show proliferation coloring. And yes, I grabbed one in a dog. Just to show how bobby these techniques tend to be. In summary, this image has been widely circulated as evidence of pornography addiction. It appears to come from a for-profit corporation selling religious porn addiction treatments. So they've got a profit incentive to shill the public on the idea that this is real. Yeah, that's very convincing. This is not something 1,000 quacks have done before. It may be an unpublished from a peer-reviewed image from an unknown patient with no analysis applied and no tracers used. This wasn't peer-reviewed, and it wasn't even published in any publications. Maybe the images don't exist here if it forms with thousands of guys. They basically say thousands of guys have been affected by porn consumption of religious and puritanical organizations. Porn is an elephant in the room. You should pass on read men's history on forums like yourbrainbalance.com. And I'm like sitting there like, no, actually, we don't have to do any of that. And we shouldn't, because, the fact of the matter is that it's very possible that all these men are psychotic and delusional, and that they're not really suffering from anything that they think they are, and that they're just religious people who can't quit because they want, or that they can't quit and they feel bad about it because they think God's upset with them for it. Well, I don't believe there is a God, a big man up there in the sky, to be upset with me in the first place, and I haven't seen any convincing evidence to the contrary, So I'm sitting there, I'm sorry, but these people do not have good research on their side. They don't have rigorous scientific studies on their side. They don't have the scientific community on their side. Nicole Pross is basically coming out against them. Thanks, Queen, for your research and everything and putting it on Medium where we could access it. Although of course, not a big fan of paywalls, to say the least. My opinion is that people are trying to make us pay, basically all over the place for things that really should be free. I think knowledge is for the benefit of all, and that it is immoral to try to make people pay for it.